Well, typically I have Lisa here on the other side, so it's not like talking to a camera, but you're used to that. So,
I am.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. A real honor.
Absolutely. I never thought I would get a chance to sit down with you. I was told by Trayvon that you would be here. And when you said that you would make time to come on the podcast, I was...
Oh, well, yes, because when I found out what you were all about, this is a project that I'm very passionate about also. Empowering women, arming women, educating women. I think that there's so many societal issues that could be solved by that. I think there's a lot of political debate in this country that could be solved by that. And I'm just a huge proponent of it.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you.
I've kept this podcast very apolitical.
Yeah.
And
we'll do that.
Yeah, I sometimes feel nervous to say that because it almost insinuates to the crowd that is really trying to preserve our gun rights that I don't care about gun rights, and that's not true. It's just that I've taken a focus, right? There's so many topics I could cover. There's only so much time I have though, right? And I've kept the focus on education around concealed carry. But part of that is knowing the laws. And,
yes.
I feel at the same time I've done a disservice to my listeners and to my followers. So this is an incredible opportunity. I would love, if you don't mind, if you introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yeah, my name is William Kirk. I'm an attorney that's been practicing a little over 30 years up in Washington State. Former King County prosecuting attorney for a few years. Been in private defense all the rest of the time. During the pandemic, didn't have anything to do. Started a little vanity project, a YouTube channel called Washington Gun Law. Thought I would do that for the pandemic and then life would go back to normal and I'd go back to being Bill the lawyer again. By the time life was ready to go back to normal, I was over 150,000 subscribers already.
Wow.
It was something I became very passionate about. I started connecting with my viewers, became more passionate about it and kind of decided to dedicate myself to try to become a full-time content creator. And we are Washington Gun Law, and we just try to educate everybody about what's going on with gun laws around the country, whether it's legislation in particular states, whether it's case law. And most importantly, what we try to do is we take very complicated legal issues and break it down in simple English in about 8 to 10 minutes so that everybody can understand what's happening.
Ooh, I appreciate that so much. Yeah. We talked about this the other day, but I come from a medical background. So I use some words sometimes, and Lena especially will be like, okay, normal word.
What was that? What was that? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I love that you already do that. And it's so funny. In my opinion, you have two of the hardest jobs you have. And I'm biased, right? I've watched my mom be a lawyer her whole life. So I've seen how difficult it can be to have that work-life balance. And then on top of that, you do content creation on a major scale.
Yeah.
Long form content takes the most time to curate. You have to be incredibly careful with what you say, especially. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
Especially with the legal stuff, because if you slip up and give wrong advice,
right,
that's not good for everybody, including myself, but everybody who took the advice as well.
Yes. And something I love about your channel, and that plays into, I'm sure, what you just said, is that you just give the facts and you allow your followers to form their own opinions. You give them the information to be an informed decision maker. And so I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the conversation that I'm most excited to have with you among all of the topics, oh my goodness, is how Second Amendment rights apply to women's safety.
Yes.
I kind of just want to hear what comes to mind for you first with that. I know that isn't the most open question, as they call it.
Yeah, it's a very open-ended question. You wouldn't want to ask that one in court. That could be a problem in the courtroom. No, I appreciate it because you and I were talking a couple of days ago, kind of brainstorming with each other, and I told you how passionate I am about this. First of all, I firmly believe that the Second Amendment is for everybody. Okay, and unfortunately, when you walk around SHOT Show, you will see that it is still predominantly exercised by one particular demographic group. But that is changing, and it is changing rapidly and for the better. I also believe that as a person who lives inside the trench of the warfare that is against our Second Amendment rights, that if we could arm the women and train the women and educate the women, the Second Amendment debate in this country changes forever. Because when I deal with what I call the anti-gun crowd, I find that maybe 2 to 3% of them have been directly affected in some way by gun violence. And I don't think there's any persuading those people at all. I think they're emotionally dug in. And I think that unless we walked a mile in their shoes, we could not really appreciate what it is that they're going through. The other 98, 97% around there, they just don't know what's going on. Guns are bad. Guns are evil. And the biggest demographic group amongst that is middle-aged white suburban women who oftentimes are driving the kids all over the place, oftentimes are the ones who should most be prepared to defend themselves and their loved ones. And by taking that position and not being willing to open up their minds to it, they are cheating themselves of one of the great opportunities you have as an American. But more importantly, you're depriving yourself of every tool that you can possibly have to defend the thing that matters the most to you, which is your family. Right. And it's the only thing that we leave behind. Our kids are the only way we change the world, right? It's what we leave behind. And why we don't guard our children with the same tenacity as we do some of our other important assets in this country kind of shocks me. So I'm a huge proponent. I'm not a huge proponent of more gun owners. I'm a huge proponent of more lawful and responsible gun owners in this country. And the biggest, fastest growing demographic group is women. And I think the Second Amendment community needs to be very conscientious about that and needs to create, and you'll know this, more inviting on-ramps. Because for many years, it was a very difficult and uncomfortable sphere for women to get into. And I think that is changing. I think it needs to continue to change. And I think people like you and, all the other female content creators that are getting into it, the female trainers, is very, very critical to creating those inviting on-ramps for women to come into the Second Amendment or any form of self-defense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ooh, I love that you made the distinction between not just giving a woman a gun.
No.
But giving her the education around it. I hear a lot from people, especially women, that they just need to buy a gun. I just need my gun. And I always encourage them to take a day to go to the range, especially a range that you can rent out a firearm at. Choose a mid to large size firearm. I love to recommend the Walther PDPF because it's kind of chunky. I don't know if you've ever held it.
Well, there's a misconception that the bigger the gun, the bigger the bag, exactly. And not recognizing the physics that, right. No, actually a 4-inch barrel sits much quieter in the hand than a 3-inch barrel does. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And to go and pick out 2 to 3 guns, get a box of like 50, 150 rounds, as long as they know how to properly and safely handle the firearm. If they could have an RO go out with them and just show them a few themes, and get comfortable to then select a firearm to take to a professional course, or at least go to a professional course that has a firearm you can learn. There's so many steps you can take before ever having to just buy a gun.
That's right.
And I think that besides the political fear and
stigma,
absolutely, there's a huge financial barrier to getting started in firearms. So there's a couple ways
that you're seeing states create more and more financial barriers on purpose as a method of depriving individuals of their, that pesky little thing called the Constitution keeps getting in the way. So what can we do? Well, let's just price a huge segment of the population out of it.
Right.
Some of the other things, 10-day waiting periods.
Mm-hmm.
There are women who are sometimes in incredibly dangerous and difficult situations. They're finally trying to get out of that abusive relationship. They might not have 10 days to wait.
Right.
And permit to purchase laws.
Right.
I think that those laws disproportionately affect women.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that legislators talk about that enough. I don't think the people who are opposing the legislation bring enough voices into those committee hearings to say, get a couple of women who are in just this horribly abusive relationship where they finally decided, no, it's time to pull the ripcord, get out of this thing. But they did have to eventually go out and defend it because, that protection order is just a piece of paper.
Right.
That's going to save your life.
Right.
So, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I actually remember you just brought something from the archives. I remember when I started sharing my journey on social media, I was, at this time I was about 21 years old, and I just got my concealed carry permit. I was sharing the journey, and this girl found me online. She'd known my, at the time, boyfriend, and they all went to church together. She found my account separately, and she came up to me. This is the most random thing. She came up to me at a Whole Foods parking lot. And was like, "Hey, Sophia, I recognize you." And she pulled me aside with her baby. And she was like, "I need you to teach me how to use a gun, like tomorrow. I have my husband who I'm divorcing broke into my home and stole my firearm."
Oh boy.
She was like, "Our home is not secured well." And I remember being like, "Oh my gosh, I know nothing about this." Like, I myself cannot teach, firearm usage. I directed her to some resources, but it was one of the moments where I was like, ooh, one day I want to be able to actually help someone with this process.
Because these can be life and death situations.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. It's a very different concept than purchasing a firearm, wearing it every day for general safety, than to know that you have someone that truly is interested in bringing you harm.
Yeah, there's a true and actual and immediate threat out there.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. What would you say the best way is to become educated on state and federal laws surrounding gun carrying and usage?
Yeah, well, I think the first place you want to start with is state laws, because as it comes to federal gun laws, your gun store, your FFL will keep you in compliance with that, because they're not going to be selling anything. You know, this whole myth of the rogue gun dealer. There's no such thing as a rogue gun dealer. They're all inspected regularly by ATF. They have very specific rules. I think you got to find a good reputable range for women. You got to find a range that is an inviting place, but also provides education, and it's education beyond basic handgun 1, basic handgun 2. The gun club that I work out of, Security Gun Club in Woodinville, Washington, put a plug in for them right now.
Nice.
We actually every month have what I call the basics of self-defense law in Washington State. I teach the class, and we walk through from the most basic concept of self-defense all the way up through the use of lethal force, so that people can understand. You can always tune into channels like Washington Gun Law if you're in Washington State, but there's a lot of other content creators. And one of the other things you can do is you can join a network of attorneys like a Right to Bear, or there are other people out there, our competitors, but good companies, and a lot of them also provide education. So yeah, but it is very, very important, because like we said earlier, we don't need more gun owners.
Right.
We need more lawful and responsible gun owners. And it is your obligation. It's a wonderful right, but it is a right that comes with a tremendous amount of obligations and responsibilities. And one of which is you have to be educated. And then in some states, you got to remember the state gun laws are kind of a moving target every legislative session. Okay. So you got to be staying up on those as well.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So it's so much responsibility, especially if you don't know that's happening.
Right.
If you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of a terrifying concept. I'm really happy to be working with Right to Bear. I'd love to know from your mouth, why did you choose them over everyone?
Oh, it's simple. It's the people. It's the people. Well, it starts at the top with Frank, and it works all the way down to everyone I've worked with. I worked with another company in this field. Don't need to name their names. It's irrelevant to this discussion. But I really do believe that life is still relational and not transactional. Yeah, and I think that this company absolutely positively lives that.
Yes.
And having been working with them for a while, I can tell you that this company on at least 3 occasions has covered cases that probably weren't covered cases. Mm-hmm. But we got to do the right thing.
Right.
And we would rather go that way. So they err on the side of really helping out their clients. And I just can't say enough good things about the people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. Yes, I have to agree with you. That is one of the major reasons. Of course, I know Trayvon from just the firearms community. And so there's a lot of trust there, but I also read through the policy quite a bit with my mom.
Yeah.
The lawyer.
You get the lawyer.
Yes, exactly. She knows the legal language. She's
right.
Honey, I do medical malpractice. I'm like, I know, Mom, but lawyer terms, like you need to figure it out. So it's kind of funny.
We all passed the bar exam at one point. We had to learn contracts.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I would love to know, I get this question a lot, especially in states where there's constitutional carry and open carry is legal. Mm-hmm. And I'm probably forgetting a few others. Do you recommend the acquisition of a permit, even when you have things like constitutional carry and open carry?
Yeah, well, I recommend that you always comply with the law. Right. Okay, so here's the thing: is if you, for example, live in a constitutional carry state, congratulations, you're living free like an American, so that's a good thing. But if you want to then go to a state that is not constitutional carry, but you want to carry, the only way you're going to likely have reciprocity in that state is through the existence of a concealed carry license from your home state. One of the biggest tapestries of trying to figure out what licenses where and stuff like that. So I get that there's some people who are so anti-government, they don't want their name on anything, and that's fine. You get to be you. But even if you're in a constitutional carry state, if you're doing travel on a national level, I do recommend you get a concealed carry license. A little secret, if you get a Utah or an Arizona concealed carry license, dang near gets you about 35 states right there.
Oh, really? That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're both available out of state. In fact, if you do a little Google search, you'll find people, shocking, all these national instructors teaching on, I can get you certified for a Utah concealed carry. I get you certified for an Arizona concealed carry. Why? Because those are the two most universally accepted concealed carry licenses in America right now.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I just
little secret.
to Utah from Arkansas.
Did you?
So I did, yes.
You like it out there?
I love it.
Beautiful state, isn't it?
Goodness, yes. The Paramount Mountains,
Yeah.
so like in the Paramount Mountains, the Paramount Mountain. What am I trying to say? The Paramount movie brand.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
With the mountains.
Yeah, with the whole star that goes around it. Yes.
Sorry, the Uinta Mountains is what those are based on, and those are the mountains right outside my apartment. And I live on the 3rd floor.
Oh, so I just got this stunning view.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't share it online because anyone that knows Utah well could find it.
Yeah,
but I'm moving soon, and I'll be sharing pictures of it because it's so beautiful, and it's going to be so hard to leave to go into the city. But oh my goodness, it's seeing the mountains everywhere every day is awesome. How do you like the Pacific Northwest?
So I love everything about the Pacific Northwest except for the politics.
Right.
And this is the thing that really bothers me about what's happened with Washington State is every Kirk that's ever lived in the United States is buried in Washington State. My great-great-great-grandpa got there in 1883. He was given 40 acres of land by the federal government for serving in the Union Army in the Civil War.
Wow.
He took his wife and 2 young kids on a wagon train from St. Louis, Missouri, out to Elmira, Washington, which isn't far from the Grand Coulee Dam. And that's where the original Kirk homestead was established. And several generations later, we're all still there. So when I come to these things, a lot of people are like, how can you still stay in Washington? What are you still doing there? And my response is, where am I supposed to go? Where am I supposed to go? Every Kirk that's ever lived in the United States is buried in Washington. I just put my dad in the ground a couple of years ago there. He's 93. So we had a fantastic run together. God was good to both of us. But I mean, it's my home state. So it's gorgeous. The people are wonderful. The scenic beauty of Washington State is unrivaled.
Yeah.
We got a lot to offer. We got our own unique culture. We got our own music. We got our own cuisine. We got our own language. It's, and then we got a political system that's ruining a very wonderful state. And you see that kind of up and down the West Coast right now. Oregon is a fantastic state that's going in the wrong direction. California, I've said, is perhaps the most beautiful place on planet Earth. And it is completely ruined at this point because of politics. And I know you don't want to get into politics, and we won't, but I feel sorry for people who no longer feel at home in their own home state or welcome in their home state.
Absolutely. And it's not that I don't want to get into politics. If I didn't want to get into politics, I wouldn't have brought you on.
Well,
in fact,
we'll keep it politically light.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I more so mean that I would like to take your approach and educate the listeners to be able to make their own decisions. We're not telling them what to decide. And the fact that you articulate that way and that you've made that part of your mission is why we have this alignment. So there's no worries here. I feel I'm not like, okay, I got to get ready to cut him off.
Don't worry. I won't go on a big rant or anything. But when you live in a state that is hell-bent on civilian disarmament, because that's what this is. It's not gun control. You don't control an inanimate object.
Right.
It's civilian disarmament. And what's the most infuriating thing about it, Sophia, is that there are statistics out there that tells us with absolute certainty where gun violence comes from. The United States Department of Justice own statistics say 88.8%. So it's a super easy number to remember. 88.8% of all gun crimes committed in the United States are committed by who? A person who is unlawfully possessing the firearm at the time the crime is committed. So our gun violence problem, we have an identifiable demographic group that we need to go after to solve this problem. Right. Yet in states like mine, California, Illinois, states like that, every piece of gun control law they pass is designed to affect people like you and me. Right. And we're not the problem. Right. And so all we're doing is disarming our population. We don't see crime numbers dropping at all. And we're making our communities more dangerous because many of these same communities are also defunding police or tying the police's hands behind their back, and while at the same time disarming their population, while at the same time providing for lighter sentences for criminals. And I just don't see how this is even a political issue.
Right.
That's the thing. I don't see this as a conservative or liberal issue. I see this as a common sense. As Americans, aren't we entitled to live in safe, clean communities?
Absolutely.
And we're not doing our citizens a service, and Washington State has gotten away from that. And I don't know. Maybe the time is coming soon where I won't be in Washington State anymore. And that's sad.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That is tragic.
But when you got kids, you know, and this agenda gets, and again, we won't get too deep into it, but this progressive agenda, when it starts getting into the public school system and all that other stuff.
Yes.
And now you have kids involved in it. I got a real high threshold of pain. I really do. But I can't have that same high threshold of pain for my kids. That would be irresponsible parenting.
Right.
So when that becomes the barometer, you start spending more time on Zillow.
Oh,
you know?
Oh yeah. I don't blame you at all. I talk with my person all the time about homeschooling, and I never thought I would do that. But with the political state we're in and the lack of kind of of like what is being told to our children, like it's kind of terrifying. And it just, with propaganda from one of the sides for sure.
Well,
like,
and it's a weird, because we don't have faith in science anymore. We don't have faith in media anymore. And now we don't have faith in the public school system anymore. And candidly, in some jurisdictions, we don't have faith in the criminal justice system anymore.
Right.
Why is that? Because when we allow politics to bleed into all of those things, politics is like rancid floodwater. It ruins everything it touches. Yeah. And it's not conservative politics or liberal politics. Politics in general, when it seeps into other industries, it ruins it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Again, I would love, please go on your rants today. I don't want you to hold back, truthfully, because if anything, if I'm being totally transparent, a little vulnerable here, one of the biggest reasons I haven't gone into politics is because I haven't felt like I could be a true voice on the political side as well.
Why?
It's like one of the reasons.
Why?
I haven't educated myself well enough. I remember I used to talk to my grandma when I was a kid. And
but how many other things you've educated yourself on in such a short period of time?
I appreciate that. I could absolutely do that. And it has like recently, when you just hear the same thing a bunch of times, it's like you at some point feel like you can't escape it. I feel like I'm in this place where I've been able to get this far without completely understanding the political side of this industry. And I hate to call it the political side of this industry. I just mean of gun laws. Let's just say that. And I'm to the point where I just need to educate myself much more.
Let me tell you where a good place to start is.
Please. I was going to ask you that for myself and listeners.
To have the mindset, right? When we want to learn, we have to go in with the right mindset. So let's go all the way back and start at the genesis of all of this, the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment goes way beyond the right to keep and bear arms. We're cheating ourselves if we think the Second Amendment is just about the right to keep and bear arms. That's a component of it. According to our founding fathers, everything that we codified in the Constitution those are not rights that were created by the Constitution. Those are rights that our Creator gave us when He created us. All the Constitution says is that government can't take it from you. Okay? The right of self-defense is the most quintessential of all human rights because it is actually the right of self-preservation. Now think about it. What is any more fundamental of a human right than the right to preserve your life and those of the loved ones? And that is why the Second Amendment, and it's Second Amendment's the right to defend yourself against any threat. Yeah, we focus on shooting people and lethal force and all that because that's the cool, juicy stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But take it as a criminal defense lawyer, 99% of self-defense cases don't involve the use of lethal force. They involve punching someone out, pushing them down, hitting them with pepper spray, things like that. But that all still is in your God-given right of self-preservation. Yeah. And the reason I say the Second Amendment is for everybody is that, and we're seeing these groups now, we're seeing the LGBT community, we're seeing more minority groups getting into the Second Amendment, is because they too have the right to preserve their lives. Absolutely. And the lives they've chosen to live.
Yes. And
I'm hoping that the Second Amendment community, which has always been a very closed off community, bunch of white dudes, basically. Just being honest, right?
No, you're right.
But there's this opportunity out there now because I think the problem with American politics is we focus so much on what makes us different and we never focus on what we have in common with each other, right? And so all of a sudden there's this segment of group out there. Let's take the LGBT community. Yeah, they're probably not going to see eye to eye on people in the gun community about a lot of things.
Right.
But on some things they will. Why don't we try to build bridges that way? Right. Take a look at environmentalists. right? Environmentalists, tree huggers, we call them, right?
Yeah.
But then take the hunting crowd or the fishing crowd. Their interests are completely aligned. Mm-hmm. They're all diehard conservationists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point.
Why don't we see them working together? And so I'm hoping that the Second Amendment community begins to open up and be more inviting to these people to bridge gaps.
Right.
And so, because again, the more we can start educating each other, the Second Amendment debate can be won through education.
Absolutely. Ooh, I just saw this. I thought of something.
All right,
here we go. One of the hardest things I have certain family members who I desperately want to arm. Mm-hmm. These are family members with kids that I love, and they're my people, Right. And every now and then they'll test me a little bit. They'll ask a political question, and boy, if I avoid the hell out of that, I would start a fire in the corner of the room to avoid, because I'm so afraid that if I say something that they are very passionately in disagreement with, I will somehow scare them away from concealed carry. And if they don't trust me as a person and my moral grounding, it's always brought back to that, then they won't trust that I will.
But you're talking about if you make an honest statement to them that you're worried about how they're going to react to it. Yes. But you don't control that.
Right.
So why are you worried about it?
I don't know. I avoid it because.
But see, you're acquiescing. Yeah. You're acquiescing the power of communication away from yourself.
That's a good point.
Right.
Oh yes, you're so right.
Because I think and dudes are really bad about this. We are. We're just terrible about a lot of things.
I think it's funny you went that direction.
No, we are because we somehow or another give up the validation of our lives to others. We care so much about what other people think about us. Yeah. And you're literally in a position where you're putting value on your life based upon something you can't control, how somebody else thinks. So speak the truth. Yeah. And how they react is, well, that's on them.
I love that.
Right?
Yes, you're a very good example of someone that does that with your channel. You've empowered a lot of people to continue to seek education. And I'm sure you've gotten, I can't imagine the backlash you've gotten over the years.
It hasn't been as bad as you think. Now, really, I will tell you where some of the backlash that come from is inside my family.
Really?
Yeah, because there's a segment of my family that spends a lot of time on MSNBC and CNN, and they don't see the world the same way as I do. And they have made issues with that in the past.
I am sorry to hear that.
It's on them. That's on them.
So you mentioned some outlets. I think that's one of the things I've felt the most nervous about, right? Finding the correct outlet to educate myself, to get multiple opinions. How do you filter through all of the outlets that are available to us? This episode of She Shield is brought to you by Right to Bear. You've probably heard me say that self-defense is more than simply carrying a firearm. It's awareness, avoidance, and preparation for anything that is to come your way. And that's why I'm partnering with Right to Bear. They stand by defenders like you and me. You'll receive benefits like expert witness support, psychological care, gun replacement, and even protection for other lawful self-defense tools like pepper spray, knives, and even your hands and feet if you have to use them in a struggle. What sets Right to Bear apart is that they are dedicated to education and immediate legal response. In case you do ever have to protect yourself, you have access to a 24/7 attorney-answered emergency hotline so that you are never alone. What I love most, though, has to be the personal connection that Right to Bear will have with you as a member. For example, Frank, the president of Right to Bear, will give you a personal phone call when he hears about a claim being filed. That level of care in the industry is extremely rare. If you carry, train, and believe in thinking ahead to protect yourself and your family, consider getting a membership with Right to Bear. If you use my code FIT4FIA10, you will get 10% off your membership, and the link to access this and to learn more is located in the show notes of this episode, which are the notes below the title. Protecting yourself and your family should not leave you defenseless afterwards. Stay safe and stay vigilant with Right to Bear.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because there is a lot of filtering that goes on. The first thing, whenever I'm going to do a video about a legal issue, the one thing I will not do is watch any other content creator on it. Ooh. Never.
Okay.
Never. because I want my message to be organic and I want it to be based on how I've interpreted it. I will only look at the language myself, and I will, sometimes you got to deep out. Sometimes it's as simple as, well, here are the words. These words have a meaning. Here's what it means. Other times you do got to go geek out a little further. You got to go look at case law. You got to look at some legislative history and things like that. But I think ultimately my main goal with Washington gun law is, you're intelligent. All my viewers are intelligent. You're all big boys and big girls. You can think for yourself. So I'm not going to tell you how to think. Yeah. I'm just going to give you the stuff to think about.
I love that.
And then I think that if you are truly, if your mind and heart are in the right place and I present the facts as they should be presented, you'll get to the correct conclusion on your own. And when people get to the conclusion on their own, they're far more invested in it.
Oh, yeah.
Than if you've shoved it down their throat or told them to do that. And I think that what frustrates me about the 2A space and content creation is there is a lot of people out there like, today I'm going to tell you how to think about this. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, the other thing is that during the 4 years that the Biden was in the White House and the Department of Justice and the ATF was kind of running roughshod on everybody, it became very easy to motivate views through rage and fear. Okay. The problem is that rage, fear is not a healthy emotion. It's not a healthy emotion. Okay. And now I think there's a lot of content creators. I think the space itself is struggling. Like, how do I still bring viewers in when I don't have anything to rage about? Yeah. But if you had a message all along that was never based on rage, but was just based on, I'm going to present the evidence to you, then there never was a transition necessary.
Absolutely.
And I'm seeing some content creators begin to struggle with, how do I get people to come back if I don't get them all pissed off, you know?
That's such a good point. It's like social media, and I've seen this on my families. I have the same political divide in my family, and one side is always crapping on the media resources that the other one is watching, and it's always like this, It's so funny to hear both. And again, I've to this point in my life very much avoided these conversations. So I'm also
that's a no-win conversation there. That one might be just
I'm also the youngest in my family. Okay. I'm used to having my voice kind of be like harder to be heard. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I have the most supportive sisters and most supportive mom, despite my sisters are very liberal. But they love what I'm doing. They support it like no one else.
That's awesome.
Oh, so great. Cool. Like, that's so really cool. I was terrified in the beginning. I was like, this could go one of two ways. Yeah. My parents
could be taken out of the will or
yes. But it's funny. We all grew up as competitive violinists and piano players. Okay. And we watched some siblings in our high schools compete against each other, and they were never like close because of it. And their parents pitted them against each other. And my mom would always like tell us, your sister will probably be first chair, but I'd love for you to be second chair. Like, what if you guys got to be stand partners, And my sisters always raised me up to like be right next to them. I never thought I would be better than them, but they always encouraged me to be anyway. And also this amazing relationship. It set me up to have the most incredible female friendships in my life now, because I just want to raise them up. I don't want to be in their spot. I just want to be next to them. And so I'm thankful to have them for that reason. At the same time, I think it's funny that we have self-serving bias. Like, self-serving bias is a term in sociology, psychology to describe for the listeners who maybe don't know this, to describe our ability to believe in a concept and then find information to support that concept, to decrease cognitive dissonance, right? When our behavior and our thoughts and our feelings about ourselves misalign. And it's really sometimes hard to watch people like get in their role, especially For You pages, the algorithm, like feeding the same thing over and over again. And I think it's engineered to make us this way, to create this divide. This is a very broad question. Are you ready for it? This is out of curiosity. Yeah. At its root, why is it so important for our government to divide us in this manner? What is the purpose
to divide us?
To divide us by these two political segments, the major two, using media. Like, what is the benefit of dividing us this way? Is that
the benefit is just to gain more control?
Okay,
it's all
because if we're divided, we can't unanimously come together. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, at its root.
Yeah, at its root, and you take a look at how. I'm a lot older than you, so I've always been a political geek. So you go back to like the 1980s and stuff, and our political discourse was so different. First of all, compromise wasn't a dirty word back then. Okay? And secondly, I believe that both parties were kind of here and here. I still believe that a majority of both parties are here and here.
Right.
But the vocal parts of the parties are here and here now.
Ooh, okay.
That's what I think the big problem is. And for whatever reason, and this is us as an American culture, there's always got to be a winner and a loser. Oh, that's why we hate soccer. Soccer ends in draw. Who wants to watch a 0-0 draw? Nobody in America does, right? We want a winner, we want a loser.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that gets into our politics. And unfortunately, when we're always demanding that we have to have a winner and a loser, the only real loser is the American people.
Yep.
And that's just, it's unfortunate. And we have to get back to a political system. And I blame both sides. I'm not going to point finger at one side or the other. They both share the blame. We have to get back to a more, workable system. And I don't know how it can happen. I don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Yes, it is very sad. Well, thank you. Thank you for touching on that. I think it's important I was kind of coming from the viewpoint of if someone was listening to this podcast and needing kind of like a broader picture of what we're talking about, wanted to kind of touch on that. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a turn here.
Okay.
So something I learned, my first professional class in the firearm space was extreme close quarter concepts. And that is the weapons-based combative style course. You learn retention, the 0 to 5 foot range of the fight, where it's not appropriate to extend your firearm out all the way. It's taught by Craig Douglas, the founder of Shipworks, and his 2 assistant instructors. And it's been an incredible introduction to self-defense because on the first night, let me just give you a little bit more context. These men are the coolest, most badass dudes you'll ever meet. And you would think that if you show up to class, you're immediately going to jump into the dirt outside and wrestle and everything. But we start with verbals. Okay. You just talk about the ask, tell, make paradigm and how that applies to the fight before the fight, right?
Right.
People use a lot of talking to disarm you and move into your space. And that's a lot of the times where a lot of people look back and are like, I don't know what happened. He just walked up and asked for a few dollars. Next thing I know, he's on top of me kind of deal. Mm-hmm. That talking distracts you. It decreases your bandwidth in order to be able to make a good judgment on what you should do. And so this class not only gives you those tools, but Craig hates when people say another tool in the toolkit, because it's how many tools do you really need, right?
You never have enough.
Exactly. And also not enough reps. And so he more so focuses on reps. We do a ton of what he calls managing unknown contacts, a lot of walking and talking, learning how to walk in an arc as opposed to just backing up. And something I really love about, the progression from day 1 to day 3 is by the end of day 3, we do a full evolution where someone approaches you. We have helmets on. We have simulation guns that shoot sim rounds based on the Glock 19 platform. And if we choose to pull our firearm or we choose to use, you can actually take inert pepper spray.
Okay. So they give you a non-lethal and a lethal option.
They allow you to bring in anything that you would technically always carry on yourself. Okay. So I take my inert pepper spray. I take my push dagger blade that I always have. Started carrying that when I started carrying hybrid bag. And then, of course, the firearm holstered. And so anytime we make a decision, whether that's to strike to create distance, maybe use the blade to punch out and create distance, or even pull the firearm and shoot at retention, at the very end, we have a discussion after each evolution. It's a very long day of talking about why we chose what we chose. And he also has each person in the group recount the story of what happened. It's always interesting to be I don't know, I blacked out. Mm-hmm. I had one of her dude pick me up. And I remember being upside down, and I'm a tall, muscular woman.
You are tall.
I am about 5'10", and I'm not easy to pick up, but Craig purposefully chose someone who could very much handle me that way. Picked me up, basically turned me upside down. And I remember feeling like I was being slammed to the earth. And next thing I know, he stopped right before, a good, martial arts practitioner and basically laid me down and then started wailing on me to give me that resistance, right? That you need to give your partner in a kind of grappling session type thing. All of that said, I remember being I don't know what happened. And I had pulled my firearm and I had decided to go to retention and fire. And I missed him completely. It hit the ground behind him, kind of skidded past his ankle a little bit. And it felt really silly. But something I really like is Craig gives us these tools to be able to assess whether or not we should have pulled our firearm. And one of the things that I've learned majoritively from this course, now that I've given you a ton of context or a ton of blabbing, is we have to be able to think about whether or not we can describe and explain why we use lethal force to a jury of our peers.
Yes.
And that's really resonated with me. It's an incredible responsibility to carry a firearm. My blade is very scary looking. I hope I never, ever, ever
have to use it either. Yeah.
But also, if I've decided to pull it out, it's going, like it's happening.
Yeah.
I'm already it's go time. It's gonna happen.
It is.
And when I train so much with it, that muscle memory would take over for sure. And so I'm in this place where I'm constantly thinking, and I've had a few things happen in the past year where, I'll just say it very generally. I was touched inappropriately not too long ago, and I actually raised my hands to punch this person. And I remember thinking, I don't know if I would be held liable for this. I don't know if I could actually prove that like this person did this to me. And like this whole thing went through my head, and I almost felt silly for like freezing in that moment and not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
But I'm also like looking back, and I'm glad I had what did I do? I yelled at him. I just berated him, was like, how dare you do this to a woman? Like, I was just like,
did that end the threat at that point?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. He backed off and was like, please don't hit me. I'm so sorry.
This is a good point to one of the things I train or teach on, because I don't do training, I teach, is I can teach everybody what they have the right to do, but there's a lot more training to learn how to do the right thing.
Right.
Okay. And in this situation, did you have the right to use some force against the person there? I believe you did, because I believe that when, I'm assuming it was a male,
yes,
touches you inappropriately like that, that is absolutely 100% an assault. It's not a felony assault, but it's an assault. And unfortunately, there's also, I would say that having spent a few years prosecuting sex offenders, men who are willing to do that probably have a lot more nefarious intents in mind. But what did you do instead? Instead of deploying force, you deployed vocal.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Situation ended. You don't have to call a lawyer. Hopefully he learned his lesson. Probably not, but he won't do it to you anymore.
Right.
Which is the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
And also in that situation, if you would have given him all those verbal commands and made it very clear that is completely unwelcome, and then he continues to do it, now you got a real good reason to use force there.
Absolutely.
Have fun with that one.
Raise his face. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a good, and that's, you made the right decision in the sense that it worked, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a long story short, but I actually had a long discussion with him after. And this was such a weird thing for me, because I was like, do I give him the time of day, or do I teach him? And I was able to sit down with him and actually talk with him. It was a really weird moment of mine, but I also like, it was one of those things where I was like,
had he been drinking and stuff?
No.
I don't know.
Yeah, it was an interesting.
I don't get that.
Yeah.
I just don't get that.
Yeah, it was an interesting moment.
I'm not saying that drinking justifies it at all.
I don't think,
but I've seen dudes do a lot of stupid stuff when they're drunk.
Drinking,
right?
literally lowers your use of your prefrontal cortex. So I mean, and I'm a woman who's had drinks, and I've said silly things. I mean, I get it. But yeah, so it was an interesting moment, because I've always like revered myself as like, not even calling myself a badass, but people they'll read my background and be like,
you read like you're a bit of a badass. Yes, you do.
And so I've told some of my friends about this occurrence, and they were like, why didn't you punch it? Like, come on. Like, and even he was like, I thought you were going to punch me. I was like, I was going to punch you. Like, I was very close. I'm glad I didn't, but
absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. And so and do you recommend in general that people adopt that mentality of,
I believe that as a defense attorney, the best way to handle conflict, if possible, is to avoid conflict.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
If possible. Right. And so you chose a method in that situation where I am going to give him very clear verbal commands.
Yes.
And if that works, we're done.
Yeah.
Okay. So you tried to avoid conflict.
Right.
Right. Now, legally, had you just turned around and decked him, probably would have been okay. I would have had no problem defending him. I would have gone, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let me tell you what he did. And by the way, during jury selection, every male on the jury is getting struck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want an all-female jury.
Wait.
Well, think about it.
Yeah. Can you do that?
Depends on how they're stacked up. And there's a little trick. We won't get too far into it. But yeah, in a case like that, I would be like, I want as many women in that jury box as humanly possible.
Absolutely.
And I'd be like, ladies, whatever, I don't know, cut you inappropriately. How'd they make you feel?
Yeah.
Right? You ask those questions in jury selection, and the ones like, I wanted to rip his head off. I would like, juror number 6, will you staying with us? That's how,
Can both sides do that? Is that
yes, prosecutors do it too.
So could they theoretically try to keep those women out?
Yes,
the jury?
They could. Ooh. That's the game we play. It's called jury selection. It should just be called jury elimination.
Yeah, for real. How? Oh, I see.
Yeah, because we're just trying to eliminate people.
Okay, so you can't say I want to keep someone, and the other side says I don't want to keep someone.
No. So the way it works is if I'm picking a 12-person jury, I will get to strike 6 people from the panel for any reason, as long as it doesn't appear to be discriminatory.
Oh.
Right. So you can't be like, I don't want the black guy on the jury. Right. You can't do that.
Right.
And I get that. Prosecutor also gets the challenge or just strike 6 people for any reason they want. And in addition to that, both sides get to challenge for cause. Mm-hmm. So let's say I was prosecuting a sex offense case, and you had a juror who themselves had been victimized by sexual assault. Mm-hmm. You can listen. That must have been really, really hard. Is there any way you could actually be fair and impartial here? And and if they're honest, they'll be like, no, actually, I can't. I want to see that dude fry for this.
Right.
Okay. Well, if I'm the prosecutor, I'd love to have them, but the defense attorney is getting rid of them, and they can challenge them for cause and just say, I don't believe juror number 17 can be impartial, and they'll excuse them.
Okay. Yeah. That's good to know. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really good to know when the jurors tell you, because sometimes you find out after the trial's over and they didn't say anything, and that can lead to mistrials and all.
Right.
Oh, it's terrible.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Law is such an onion.
It is.
I believe that's the only thing I can think of.
No, but it is. It's
I consider law. I bought an LSAT book when I dropped out of medical school. I did a master's because I was like too embarrassed to say that I had just dropped out. So I was like, I dropped into a master's.
There you go.
And that made more sense to me. And then I bought an LSAT book because I was like, well, I don't want to just like have my master's. All my family has their master's degree. I want to be, and I bought it and I was like, the gun industry looks really nice. Not that the LSAT exam, says anything about that. It's mostly just,
I've taken it. Yeah.
As I said, it's the MCAT equivalent for on reading all that stuff. So but yeah, so the next place I'd like to go with you, if you don't mind. And this is, okay, let's talk about the force continuum, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about like using your hands, striking. I've mentioned the use of a blade. Okay.
Let me jump in right there.
Please do.
If you used your hands on me, that's probably defined as non-lethal force.
Okay.
You use your blade on me, that's going to be defined as lethal force, because lethal force is the use of force that is likely to cause death or substantial bodily injury. Okay. And I can assure you, puncturing a hole in a person constitutes substantial bodily injury.
Yes.
So I love what you said earlier about what your everyday carry includes both non-lethal and lethal.
Yes,
I think that's fantastic. But a lot of people think like, oh, yeah, I got a non-lethal option. What's that? It's my knife. Well, that's not a non-lethal option. That's a secondary lethal option,
Yeah.
Pepper spray and things like that, are stun guns and things like that, are by design meant to be non-lethal.
Right.
Okay. We don't get to use lethal force. I don't care what state you're in. You don't get to use lethal force until you are in imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury.
Absolutely.
That's the rule.
Right.
Oftentimes, use of force can be done prior to getting to that point. You can use force to defend yourself. You just haven't got to the point of being able to use lethal force.
Right.
I will tell you that as a criminal defense lawyer, where most people get in trouble, it's not that they did not have the right to use force. It's that they didn't have the right to use as much force as they used. Ooh. It's the proportionality of the force they use.
Ooh, okay.
All right. You bring a gun to a fist fight. Mm-hmm. It's a disproportionate use of force.
Ooh, okay. We have to talk about this. So, okay. So anytime I feel a threat, and I'm not just like putting myself in situations where I feel threatened.
I think you're probably smarter than that. Yeah. You're trained well enough to know not to do that.
Go to bars. I don't walk down alleyways. Like when I park my car, I'm very intentional about where I park it.
He's really good about it.
Really good. It's so funny. And so, But being a woman,
Yeah.
things happen left and right, just like existing.
Yes.
I intentionally dress more masculine going certain places. Like I'm very particular about that.
Very
Depending on
anxious about it.
I have to be. And
Yeah.
I've been that way since I was a kid because of, I was exposed to that side of the world very early.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm here in the gun industry. I also think guns are cool. Thanks.
Love having you.
Yeah, everyone's welcome. It's so funny. But, okay, so I had a couple places I wanted to go with this. So one is, I was in ECQC and one of the evolutions, Craig told the lead instructor, told this guy who was my he calls them the morally gray person. So he doesn't say he's the bad guy. He calls this person just like the approaching individual because a lot of the evolutions, no one pulls out a gun. Some people pepper spray and it ends. Some people strike and it ends. And sometimes nothing happens.
Right.
I love that about the course because
sometimes you give a very strong verbal command and they listen to it and they just turn around like, all right,
even though it's
picking on the wrong person.
You'll see them physically recoil when the person gets louder. It's especially with women, like they don't expect us to get loud. And I had a situation where, in my head, this is a story I tell myself. My gun doesn't come out unless I've decided I need to use it. The idea of, this is why I want to talk to you about this. Because in my eyes, brandishing, hi, it's Lanny Barnes. She's next. In my eyes, I'm like, I can't, what is it called? Brandishing a firearm?
Displaying, brandishing. Yeah, it's all
same thing.
Yeah.
Brandishing a firearm or a blade without the intention of using it. Or if I do it, they could, sue me for brandishing, why she just pulled a fucking gun on me. I was just going to like flirt with her and like she went crazy.
Right. Or if you do have an escalating situation, sometimes the improper displaying of a firearm escalates things even more to the point where now the other side could justify drawing their firearm and now we're at game on.
Okay. Yes. So in this simulation, Justin, the guy that came from me, good friend now, he comes up to me and he's acting drunk, he's like dragging his leg and he's like, hey girl. And I'm arcing and I'm like, hey man, like, I need you to stay back. What's going on? Like, and he's like, I'm just trying to get your number, like he's doing a simulation. And was
he good at that at least?
So good at it.
So he knew, even though he was a bit of a player at one point. Yeah.
That's hilarious. That's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah. It's like his wedding ring was like, sparkling in the background, but he's coming up and, he got so close that I actually went for an eye jab. So I actually ended up just palming his entire helmet. And he told me later, he was like, I was really surprised you did that. You were so fast. I train palms and knees, like very select striking for self-defense. I come from all the striking, but I've chosen what's most applicable now. So it's actually very natural for me to do that and create space. And then it pissed him off so badly. Like he said, if she hits me, I'm going to just like tackle her basically, that he rushed me. And I've barely had time to pull to retention and I missed. We were crazy.
So that's why you skipped off the ground.
Yes, that's the simulation I'm talking about. And Craig asked me after the evolution, he was like, why did you take so long to draw your gun? And to me, I thought, well, if I can hit him hard enough, he's drunk, right? I'm using my like.
Yeah, but let's back up for a second.
Yes, let's back up. Let's talk about it.
Okay. But you chose to go hands-on in a situation where you maybe didn't have to go hands-on.
Okay, sorry, a little bit more context. I told him to back up many times.
Oh, and he closed in on you.
Sorry, I didn't explain that very well.
Okay.
Cam, you and I are like this close, and I was creating, and he was just like, no, dude, like, I'm not a threat. Like, coming, hand her up. So I like threw a palm. I'll send you the video later. I'll show you.
I'd like to check.
Yeah.
But you'd also given him very clear verbal warnings, like, hey, you need to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Back the fuck up.
That's a good indication.
Yeah, exactly.
It is.
I use cussing and I teach
that's fine.
women.
It's an effective way to communicate sometimes.
And there's a difference between back up motherfucker and back the fuck up. I always teach women, like, there's a way to use cuss words. If you don't already cuss, don't start cussing, because that friend that like doesn't cuss and then they start cussing and they don't sound like they're legit.
It doesn't sound natural.
Yeah. I'm always like, there are other ways to add exclamation points.
I have a mouth like a sailor, by the way.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering if I was offending you.
No, I got
we are with Right to Bear.
Mouth like a sailor, but I don't typically swear in front of the camera.
Do you prefer I remove cuss words?
No, I could care less.
If I do, but you're not going to. Is that what you're saying?
I'll drop an F-bomb if we get to it, but no, no, it does not. If the camera wasn't on, we're out here, I'd probably be that's this level. Yeah, that's way. But typically, this is my dad. I I won't talk that way in front of women until they start talking that way first.
Oh my gosh, what a cool rule.
Yeah.
Like that's great.
Yeah, I just don't think it sounds very gentlemanly for you to start throwing F-bombs out right away.
So I teach my sons.
My dad was very particular about certain when it came to how you speak around women.
Technically, my dad doesn't like when I use the F word, but maybe that's why I use it. I don't know.
My dad didn't like it, but he would have killed me if he found me using it in front of women.
I see. Okay.
You know, if I'm out with my boys, we're having a couple beers and doing our guy stuff, whatever. But put a lady in the room, and my boys are taught that way too.
Ooh, I like it. Yeah. I like these standards. Yeah, I like that.
Very simple standards.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I recently had a discussion with my guy on like, what are we going to do about cussing? Because we can't just like stop cussing. So and we had this whole like, well, is that how we talk to them? Is that what we do? So I'll have to have.
You know, there's studies out there that say some people who cuss a lot is actually a sign of extreme intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Why do you think I cuss? But I mean, no, that's so funny. It's good to know. Okay. So going back to this evolution.
Yeah.
Are you saying, okay, so now that you know a little bit more of the context, he then rushes me and I pull my gun out. With him already getting that close to me, the size disparity in this situation, that's not something I normally struggle with. I'm 5'10", I lift weights, you know, I know my stature.
But let's take a look at the average woman. What's the average woman? What's she about? 5'3", 5'4", 5'5",
yeah.
maybe 120, 125 pounds.
120.
Right?
Page. Yes.
Okay. So the average size male is going to have at least a physical advantage. Now, I get there can be training components and things like that, and he can be getting way into.
Yeah.
So
but strength matters.
When we're talking about, I have oftentimes trained that I believe in hand-to-hand combat. Women get to a position oftentimes where they can use lethal force quicker than men because they more easily end up in a position of where they're in imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury.
Right.
So, for example, I take a 6'6" guy, 240 pounds, and I pit him against another 6'6" guy, 240 pounds. This is going to be a pretty good fight.
Yeah.
Okay. And the likelihood that either one of them is going to get the other one into imminent threat of death or serious bodily injuries, while not impossible, is a little more difficult. But change the victim to a 5'3", 41-year-old woman who's 120 pounds. Literally, the minute he gets his hands on her, she's in imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. Change her to a 75-year-old woman with a surgically replaced hip already. I'm telling you, the second he gets a hand on her, she's in imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. So could she deploy lethal force sooner than perhaps if the victim was a more equally statured victim? Yes.
Right.
Yes, I do.
Okay. And then to bounce off that point back to earlier, and I was like, I have two thoughts I really want to say. My brain was competing with me. In a court of law, Jesse is about 6'3", 180. I'm 5'10", 165 on a good week. And I didn't have my blade on me in the simulation. I actually only had my gun. I was filming at the CCQC, so all my gear was spread out with camera gear, and I only had my gun. So I didn't get to like do that. But do you think, say I pulled my blade as opposed to my firearm in that moment, which that's a whole thing. I'm still working. Blades are very new to me, so I'm working on like when they should come out versus the gun. In a court of law, would that be seen as a problem because it's a blade in any way? Okay,
nope.
So
I don't think it's a problem if you display the firearm.
Really?
Nope. There's a difference between displaying a firearm and pointing a firearm at a person.
Oh,
legally speaking, there is. So, let's say, shit, yeah, right, okay. Oh no, that's good. Hey, like I said, I'm not going to be offended. I'm not offended. I mean, come on, I lived in a fraternity for 4 years at a college, so
yeah.
All right, so a potential perpetrator is coming towards you.
Yeah.
Okay. You give them verbal commands. Back off, back off. They clearly are not listening. Okay. If you display the firearm, that in many states would be unlawful if you're doing so to threaten or intimidate the person. I'm not talking about pointing. I'm just saying, what's the one exception to displaying a firearm if you want to threaten or intimidate a person? When it's in an act of lawful self-defense. Okay. So I have always trained that it is lawful to display a firearm, but here's the danger.
Okay.
When you display your firearm, there's this tipping point you're going over. If people don't realize they're going over it, tell you it's too late.
Okay.
Because one of three things is going to happen, Sophia.
Okay.
Number one, you display the firearm, the perpetrator goes, crap, picked on the wrong person.
Right.
They leave.
Best case
You
scenario.
Everyone lives happily ever after. Okay.
Should you still call a lawyer if you do that?
I think you should call a lawyer, and depending on where you're located, you may want to call 911.
Okay, got it.
But like in Seattle, if I'm downtown Seattle, I ain't calling 911.
Yeah,
because they might think I'm the bad guy.
Okay, right? Got it. Thank you. Sorry.
Politics bleeding into law enforcement now, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, the second thing that can happen is you could display your firearm. They then decide they're going to display their firearm, and it's game on.
Right.
Here we go.
Horrifying.
And for all the badass mofos out there, like, I'm a pretty good shot, I go to the range all the time. I want you to know that piece of paper is not shooting back at you when you're at the range, but in the scenario I've described, they are. Okay.
Yes.
The third thing that can happen sometimes, and this happens more frequently than people know, is you display the firearm, they take off, but then they call 911 themselves, and they describe you doing something with the firearm that goes well beyond merely displaying it, like pointing it at their head, telling them you're going to blow their effing brains out and things like that, of which none of that may have occurred.
Right.
But now we are in a credibility tug of war, and unless it's captured on camera.
Right.
Here we go. So understand that displaying a firearm is a tipping point that once you go over, it's a dangerous tipping point. I'm not trying to discourage you from it. I just want you to be extra conscientious about it.
Absolutely.
However, when it comes to pointing a firearm at a person, because the amount of trouble that you can get in, because in every state in the country, if you unlawfully point a firearm at a person, it is a felony assault. Felony assault.
Terrifying.
Prison time kind of felony assault.
Shit.
Okay. So if you do that unlawfully, there is so much trouble that you can be in that I and all the firearms instructors that I've had the pleasure of teaching, which we all agree that you never point a firearm at a person unless you are legally justified to pull the trigger also. That's the quantum of proof you need to point a firearm at a person.
God.
Right?
This is making me think about, I teach in my classes, at my, even in my first class, so when we get to the very end, I always give them 4 sets of 3 draws and shots for concealed carry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't give you context. I always say on the 3rd set, don't shoot. Just present and hold. But I have them presenting out on target.
Mm-hmm.
In the state that if someone goes, oh my God, never mind, and runs away, they don't have this muscle memory to pull the trigger. They at least have the idea.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
They can prep the trigger perhaps. If they're at that level, that's a couple more classes in. But if they come out on target,
when you say prep the trigger, are you talking about actually taking all the take up on it and all that?
It depends. Yes. So I've gotten to where, this is good. I've only instructed firearms for I don't know.
I'm not gonna second guess your training, but what I am gonna say is this: is that when we did take all that, when we're at that wall,
it's so easy,
and we are, because you got to think about the emotional situation you're in here. Yeah, at the range, it's and that piece of paper ain't coming at you with a knife,
right?
But what happens when it is, and you're, So again, you got to instruct, but I really honestly believe do not, and just because you have the legal right to point the firearm at a person doesn't mean you have to shoot him every time too, right? It's a case-by-case basis.
Right.
But the quantum of proof you need to point a firearm at another person, I believe, is you need to reasonably believe that you are an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. So let's take a scenario, even though you wouldn't be walking through an alley. This is,
right.
I'm a lawyer. I get to talk in the hypothetical all the time. Your mom will tell you this too.
Yes.
You're walking through an alley. Dude comes up, is walking to you. You're like, hey man, leave me alone. And all of a sudden he's got a knife out. Okay. Are you an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Even if he's for the
10 yards away.
Exactly. His ability to run. Thank you. You've read my mind.
Yes. You could close in on that right away.
Yes.
So do you have the right to use force at this point? Yes, you do. Do you have the right to use lethal force at this point? I believe you do. Because I just said you're an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury.
Right.
He has a deadly weapon in his hand.
Right.
He's shown an intention. So you draw on him and he drops the knife and turns around and runs away. There's a situation where we had the right to lawfully point the firearm. We did so, and that ended the threat right there.
Right.
So that's an example of, even though you have the right to point the firearm, you don't necessarily have to discharge.
Right.
Of course, you'd present the firearm. Doesn't dissuade them in any way.
Right.
I guess it's time for him to smile for the flash now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was an evolution where a guy pulled his gun to low ready and was like, I really don't want to shoot you. Finger, if you saw it on CCTV footage, we in ECQC were taught to put our register our index finger super high on the slide, almost
Yeah.
put in like the freaking port.
Yep.
So like if there was a video of this, which another guy came in with a phone, sometimes Craig will be like, go record it, like act like you're recording it, like, oh, what's going on here? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So this guy put his finger really high up on the slide. You would see it from a mile away that it wasn't on the trigger. I think that's really cool. Like, at least in court, he would have this, I would think, this ability to say, my finger never went on the trigger. The gun was never pointed at him, because the guy ended up backing away. No one had to get hurt.
Yep.
So I thought that was really cool. It was a good example of that. And Craig kind of discussed how that might be taken differently in varying states, right?
Yeah.
Drawing the
Right, or within a state. So, for example, if that happened in my side of Washington State, in the Seattle region, with the jury pool I get over there, I don't know. Put it on Eastern Washington. My client's probably getting a medal for what they did, you know?
Yeah.
And it's the sad thing. Again, this is what happens when we let politics bleed into everything. It ruins everything it touches.
Yeah.
So.
Ugh. What did you call it again? What type of water?
What's that?
You called politics when it weaves in.
Oh, it's rancid floodwater.
Rancid floodwater.
It's rancid floodwater.
You said it, and I was like,
touch.
I need to think about that one. Like, I need to.
It ruins everything it touches.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Give you an example. Science. 20 years ago, if you were having a conversation with someone and they said, well, you know, according to scientists, you kind of like lean in like, oh, what did the scientists have to say? Go through the pandemic, let politics get injected into science. Now someone starts going, well, you know, according to the science, you and I both kind of do this and like, yeah, whose scientists are we talking about?
Right.
Yours,
owned by
mine, or the normal ones, right? You know,
who's paying
the same scientist that told me the vaccine works and the masks work and that plexiglass only needs to go up 6 feet because apparently the coronavirus can't get higher than 6 feet, or, you know, whatever.
That's a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what happens when you let politics bleed into anything.
Jesus. I love this. Oh my gosh. I've learned so much. And like, I hope the listeners, right? Because we have more than one. Sometimes I'm like, I imagine this one person listening.
To both of you watching right now, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
That's so funny. I hope whoever's listening, if you are like me and you've waited to take action to educate yourself politically, that this has inspired you. If anything, I felt a lot of shame for it over the years, and I've gotten to where the more I'm just like, I admit it, the more people are willing to be like, oh, well, let me tell you my resources and like how I, you know, because I'm meeting more people in the industry that are like, yeah, actually, I don't really know much about politics. And they're like, I don't know how to contribute to this conversation. We'll be at dinner.
Well, but the last place you're going to find out about politics is mainstream media.
Oh, 1,000.
That is, and listen, my wife always says to me, like, why do you watch Fox News? And I was like, for entertainment.
Yeah.
I don't get my news from Fox News.
Right.
Do I get entertained?
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of do. I find some of it to be entertaining.
Yeah.
I think that social media content creators, the reason that they've grown so much is because they are the only ones that are objectively reporting what's going on.
Yes. Ooh, yes. Yes. I love that about social media.
It's the one good thing about social media.
One good thing about social
media. It's got some bad things to it, no doubt about it.
Yeah. It gives like the lay person, the non, you know.
Look what's happening in Minnesota.
I don't know what's happening in Minnesota.
No, you really do stay out of it.
Yeah, I do.
So, you know, a content creator goes out there and starts to, you know, uncovering all of this small E daycare fraud.
Oh, right. Yes.
And,
okay,
and
sorry.
Nobody.
Do know.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't
so nobody in mainstream media, and this has been going on for years.
Yeah.
Nobody in local media, national media, anybody ever did anything about it.
Yeah.
It's a kid with a DJI mic and a camera that goes out and busts this whole story over. He had no political motivation to it. He just wanted to expose what's going on. Yeah. Why is Joe Rogan's podcast so huge? It's because he's authentic and he's credible.
Yeah.
And that's what you're beginning to see. And so there are plenty of people in social media that will totally try to mislead you and clickbait you and stuff like that. But if you do your homework, you will find content creators out there that are just trying to give you the stuff to think about.
Yeah.
And then you figure out what it means to you.
Almost like your channel.
It is what we try to do at Washington Gun Law.
I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It makes it easy. It makes it a little less controversial too.
Yeah.
Because then I don't have, you took the position of blah, 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 blah. I didn't take any position. I took the position. I'm going to tell you what the law said.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what? If you're down for it, I get political and legal questions all the time. And I'm always like, not me. I can teach you how to fight, you know?
Yeah.
I would love it if over the next like I don't know, like 4 to 6 months, I'll collect some of my most frequently asked questions.
Want to do this again and we'll do that? That would be awesome. I would be flattered.
From listeners, from followers, from students of mine. That would be an honor. I've learned so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Taking the time
This is a real
a hot commodity at this booth here at SHOT Show 2026. I'm really thankful that Right to Bear brought us together. They are a sponsor of my podcast.
I'm thankful for what you're doing.
Thank you.
I really appreciate what you're doing, and I hope there's a lot more like you out there doing the same thing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time more than you know.